My fiancé, Daniel Carver, was obsessively pursuing a poor university student. The girl was cold and proud, unwilling to be a plaything in the hands of the wealthy and powerful. She stopped my car in the pouring rain, her expression defiant. "Miss Lancaster, please keep your fiancé in check. I may be poor, but I'm not to be humiliated at anyone's whim." To avoid humiliating her, Daniel turned and broke off our engagement. Then ostentatiously spent £200 million to marry that girl. 3 years later, I got engaged again. Daniel showed up uninvited at my engagement party, drank until he had a gastric hemorrhage, and was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. Gladys Bathurst, now Mrs. Carver, burst into my office, gritting her teeth as she demanded, "Now everyone knows you're Daniel's unforgettable true love. And I've become the laughingstock of our social circle. Are you pleased with yourself, Sybil?" Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. The room fell silent. It was common knowledge that the Lancaster and Carver families had been at loggerheads over a female student, which ended with her marrying into the wealthy Carver family. No one expected this drama to have a sequel. I couldn't help but frown slightly. Had Gladys Bathurst, after being Mrs. Carver for 3 years, still not learned to be less impulsive? I spoke with a detached tone. "Mrs. Carver, I don't believe we're on familiar enough terms for you to address me by my first name. In the future, please call me Ms. Lancaster or address me by my title. If you need to see me, please make an appointment through my secretary." Gladys's face paled, looking somewhat embarrassed. My expression remained calm as water as I gazed at her coolly. She was dressed head to toe in luxury brands. A far cry from the poor student she was 3 years ago. Yet her demeanor still held that same cold defiance. 3 years ago, Daniel Carver had told me he was drawn to Gladys's unique aura. Despite her poverty, she had integrity, something he felt people like us lacked most. In our circle, everyone put their interests first. Even marriages were used for personal gain. Couples who married for convenience and lived separate lives were commonplace. So when someone told me Daniel was fervently pursuing an English literature student, I didn't pay much attention. Even when Gladys came to see me, I wasn't concerned. But I truly hadn't expected Daniel to break off our engagement for her. I calmly asked him, "Are you sure about this, Daniel? You know, I wouldn't interfere with what you do outside our marriage." Daniel's face darkened at my words. After a long silence, he said, "She's different from those other women. She doesn't want my money at all." Of course, she was different. She wanted much more than those other women. I found it rather amusing. How could someone as naive as Daniel have been raised in the murky waters of high society? I agreed to end the engagement. The price was the Carver family handing over their multi-million-pound project in London to me. As we reached an agreement, Daniel suddenly asked before leaving, "Sybil, did you ever love me?" I didn't answer him then. But the truth was, I had cared for him once. My parents' marriage was also a business arrangement. My mother was unfortunate. She fell in love with my father in a marriage full of financial interests. But my father was a womanizer. He had affairs outside of marriage and eventually died in his mistress's bed. My mother couldn't accept this. She fell seriously ill, and after recovering physically, she devoted herself entirely to religion, withdrawing from worldly affairs. My grandfather was furious and disappointed by my father's undignified death, which led to his disfavor towards me as well. I gradually became a marginalized figure in the family, until Daniel came to visit our home and gave me a chocolate. We gradually began to play together and became inseparable. Only then did my grandfather start to pay attention to me again. After I graduated from university, grandfather wanted to choose a new heir. I wasn't the only candidate. Besides my father, grandfather had 2 daughters and an illegitimate son, Samuel Lancaster. My aunts were only interested in enjoying the fruits of the family's success, without any desire to inherit the business. Samuel, being the illegitimate son, became my biggest rival. Every day, I worked under immense pressure, striving to achieve results and prove my capabilities. I did quite well, multiplying the company's performance several times over. But that didn't make my grandfather view me any differently. Until I got engaged to Daniel Carver. The Carver family was an old, established family comparable to the Lancasters. Our marriage would create a win-win situation for both families. Only then did grandfather officially announce that I would take over the Lancaster group and become the new heir. Daniel had saved me from difficult situations twice before. It was only natural that I would develop feelings for him. However, those subtle stirrings of the heart became insignificant after Gladys appeared. I won't be a failure like my father, nor an escapist like my mother. I will only be Sybil Lancaster, forever standing at the pinnacle. No one can bring me down. Not even love. Gladys wept silently. She indeed possessed an ethereal beauty, and her tears gave her a fragile appearance. However, when she spoke, her words were utterly absurd. Miss Lancaster, could you please be merciful and leave my marriage with Daniel alone? I really can't take it anymore. The crowd immediately erupted into a commotion. I could already imagine the headlines for tonight's news. Hashtag Lancaster Group CEO interferes in ex-fiancé's marriage. Hashtag Sybil Lancaster and Daniel Carver's unresolved relationship. Hashtag. The secretary began to clear the room, warning everyone not to post anything online. I was growing weary, and my voice turned cold. Mrs. Carver, out of respect for the Carver family, I'll overlook your nonsense this time. But if there's a next time, don't blame me for being unkind. With that, I called security to escort Gladys out. That evening, as I returned home and pushed open the door, I was immediately pulled inside and pinned against the wall. A man's crisp voice sounded in my ear, tinged with a hint of jealousy. Sybil, I'm jealous. And deliberately drinking until he vomited blood. Why didn't he just drink himself to death? I broke free from his grip. Cedric Paget, how did you get my house code? Cedric's eyes were dark, looking at me with a puppy-like gaze, appearing somewhat docile. Your grandfather asked me to move in. It was then that I noticed the previously spacious room was now filled with many of his belongings. It added a touch of domesticity to the atmosphere. I couldn't help but frown. His gaze never left me, and upon seeing my frown, he immediately apologized pitifully. Don't be angry. If you don't want this, I'll move out right away. He was about to start packing his things. I held him back. It's fine. We're getting married at the end of the year anyway. His eyes immediately lit up, looking at me excitedly. Are you tired? Shall I give you a tour? I was curious to see what else he had done. So I followed him into the house without showing any emotion. As I looked up, I saw a giant poster of our couple photo hanging on the second-floor loft. The scene looked rather comical from any angle. I couldn't help but laugh. I did a bit of decorating. Do you like it? He looked at me expectantly, like a puppy waiting for its owner's praise and approval. It was hard to imagine that this man was the legendary ruthless figure in the business world. When Cedric was 18, the head of the Paget family passed away unexpectedly, and he hastily took over the family business. In just 3 years, he built a vast business empire around Paget Group, with immeasurable assets. The Paget family rose rapidly, surpassing all other prominent families in London. And he was only 21 now, 5 years younger than me. Previously, when I saw him in professional settings, I always felt he was mature beyond his years. With a calm and reserved personality, unfathomable. Today, I finally witnessed the youthful spirit befitting his age. Not wanting to discourage him, I casually complimented. The photo is well chosen. Cedric froze for a moment, his pale ears instantly turning bright red, threatening to spread from his neck to his face. He said softly, I think this one looks the best too. I was a bit taken aback, suddenly realizing that the photo of us was rather intimate, making my compliments seem quite flirtatious. Feeling somewhat awkward, I tried to maintain my composure. I'm tired. I'm going to rest now. With that, I went upstairs directly. I wasn't surprised that grandfather would let Cedric move in, since he retired to the background after a serious illness. And my father passed away unexpectedly. The Lancaster family had been in decline. Even though I worked tirelessly day and night, I had only just managed to stabilize the situation and prevent the complete collapse of our empire. It was too difficult to breathe new life into the Lancaster family. He had previously pinned his hopes on the Carver family, but they had called off the engagement. Cedric's appearance rekindled his hope. "Sybil, it's not that I don't trust you, but a wise man takes advantage of favorable circumstances. Smart people know how to leverage resources, and the Paget family will be our best asset." Of course, I understood. Marriages between prominent families have always been a means to consolidate power and status. I just couldn't accept his urgency. That urgency to offer me as a gift to achieve his goals. My best friend, Muriel Sinclair, was celebrating her birthday at a private club. As I walked into the room, I immediately spotted Daniel and Gladys sitting on the sofa. He looked up at me, his eyes swirling with emotion, a hint of pain visible. I coolly averted my gaze and sat down at the other end of the sofa. Muriel quickly moved over and whispered to me. "I didn't invite him, he came on his own." As if that wasn't enough, he brought that woman with him. It's so annoying. Not wanting to discuss the topic, I took out the birthday gift I had prepared. "Happy birthday." She opened the box, her face lighting up with delight. "Sybil, I love you." Inside was a limited edition lady's watch. It had taken quite some effort and connections to get my hands on it. Muriel hugged me playfully. "Oh darling, marry me, Miss Lancaster." "I'll be your mistress." Everyone teased. "Wake up, you're no match for Mr. Paget when it comes to competing for Sybil." If I were Sybil, I'd have both. Muriel on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Cedric on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. As laughter filled the room, Gladys abruptly stood up. Her sudden interruption of the banter left everyone looking at each other awkwardly. She turned to Daniel with a tense expression. "Daniel, come out for a moment." Daniel silently got up and followed her out. The two started arguing in the hallway, their voices loud enough to be heard in the room. Forced to eavesdrop, everyone felt uncomfortable. Gladys's voice sounded desperate. "From the moment Sybil walked into this room, you haven't taken your eyes off her. What are you trying to do? What do you want?" Daniel's tone was cold. "Can you stop being unreasonable?" "I'm being unreasonable?" Gladys let out a bitter laugh. "Let me show you what unreasonable really is." The door to the room was suddenly pushed open. Gladys burst in like a cannonball. Just like 3 years ago when she had rushed into the rain to stop my car. She recklessly charged up to me, pointing at Daniel and saying, "Sybil Lancaster, I don't want this man anymore. I'm giving him to you." Daniel rushed in after her, grabbing her wrist, trying to drag her away. "Can you stop acting crazy? You might not care about your reputation, but the Carver family still has a name to uphold. Whatever you want to say, we can discuss it at home." Gladys shook him off violently, hysterically shouting, "What is there to discuss at home? That you've finally realized you're in love with Sybil Lancaster? How you've been secretly coveting her? How you get drunk every night calling her name? Ha! I have no reputation? Daniel Carver, don't forget who desperately pursued whom. I told you from the start, I'm not some trophy wife for you aristocrats to play with and humiliate." Daniel's forehead veins were bulging. He couldn't take it anymore and roared, "Yes. Yes, I was the one who actively pursued you. But Gladys, don't make me regret it." Gladys froze. The entire room fell silent in an instant. Gladys started laughing maniacally, tears streaming down her face as she laughed. "See, you've finally admitted it." Each word dripped with anguish. Daniel collapsed onto the sofa, looking utterly defeated. I'd had enough of this drama. I stood up to leave. "Muriel, I'm heading off." Gladys blocked my path, her eyes brimming with tears as she glared at me hatefully. "Sybil, you seduce someone else's husband and think you can just walk away? You bloody homewrecker." I coldly picked up a bottle of red wine from the bar and poured the entire thing over her head. "Who do you think you are? How dare you act up in front of me? You slept your way to the top, so you think everyone's as shameless as you?" Drenched in red wine, Gladys screamed pathetically, covering her head. "How dare you pour wine on me?" I sneered, "How dare I? Because I'm Sybil Lancaster. Because I'm the heiress of the century-old Lancaster family. And you? What gives you the right? Your utter uselessness? Your ability to throw tantrums? The fact that you're nothing but a circus clown? Women who marry into prestigious families are never just trophy wives. The ladies have their own battlefields. They help their husbands and families maintain connections and navigate social circles in their own arena. But this useless Gladys couldn't even manage to be a proper ornament. Let me give you a piece of advice. You've managed to marry above your station, don't ruin it for yourself. And know your place. I'm not someone you can afford to offend. Gladys, hit where it hurt, flushed red with anger and spat out. Who married above their station? You think you're so great just because you're rich? You rich people are disgusting. With that one sentence, she had insulted everyone present. The situation having escalated this far, everyone's expressions darkened. Daniel, how can you not even control your wife? She's attacking all of us now. Utterly humiliated by her, Daniel could only apologize to everyone before forcibly dragging Gladys away. What should have been a pleasant gathering ended on a sour note. Muriel could sense my displeasure, but she persisted in dragging me to a pub for a second round of drinks. She navigated the scene with ease, ordering a lineup of male models. Each tall, muscular, and strikingly handsome. She grinned at me, SYB, I bet this is your first time in a place like this. Don't worry, these lads are well behaved. They won't try anything funny. She turned to one of the models who resembled a popular actor and beckoned him over. Go help Ms. Lancaster with her drink. The young man approached me and knelt obediently at my feet to pour my drink. I frowned and said coolly, you can stand up to pour, thank you. Muriel took a sip of her drink and leaned in conspiratorially. I heard the funniest story the other day. It was about Gladys. This woman was indeed peculiar, living up to Daniel's initial assessment of her having an integrity. Specifically, after finally marrying into a wealthy family and elevating her status, she insisted on distancing herself from the Carver family at every turn. Instead of embracing the role of an elegant lady of leisure, she wanted to work and be self-sufficient. The Carvers offered to use their connections to secure her a position at a university, but she flatly refused, determined to earn a teaching qualification on her own merit. After a year of intense study at home, she failed to pass the exam. In the end, she could only find work as a teacher at a small tutoring center, earning a mere £1,500 a month. Moreover, she fiercely guarded against her own family taking advantage of the Carvers' wealth. Her parents, being simple and honest folk, meekly followed their daughter's wishes. But recently, Gladys's brother got into some trouble. While defending his girlfriend, he accidentally seriously injured someone. The victim's family demanded £2 million in compensation, threatening prison time otherwise. Her family was penniless, where could they possibly find £2 million? But the Carvers could easily afford it. So her parents went to her workplace, falling to their knees before her, weeping and begging her to save her brother. And do you know what she did? Gladys took out a card containing all her savings from work, a mere £30,000. Her parents were devastated, unable to understand why their daughter was being so heartless. Are you really going to let your brother go to prison? If he goes in, his life will be ruined. In truth, both the incident and the £2 million were trivial matters for the Carver family. If Gladys had just asked, the Carvers could have resolved it in a minute. But she stubbornly refused, clinging to her principles. I married Daniel because I love him as a person, not for his power or his money. I don't want the Carvers to look down on me, or for people to whisper behind my back that I'm a gold digger or a burden. I don't want to be gossiped about. You only see the surface glamour, but you have no idea how difficult it is for me in the Carver family. My brother is your son, but am I not your daughter too? In reality, the Carvers treated her quite well. She was just overly sensitive and awkward, unable to fit in with high society. The incident caused quite a stir. When the Carvers found out, they felt embarrassed and wanted to pay the money for her, but Gladys rebuffed them, having their good intentions thrown back in their faces. The Carvers decided to wash their hands of the matter. In the end, her brother went to prison, and her parents severed ties with her. Muriel concluded with a sigh. Oh, don't you think this Gladys is mental? She actually said she married Daniel for love, not for his money? To prove herself, she's living a miserable life in what should be a cushy situation. When she first got Daniel wrapped around her finger, I thought she must have had some tricks up her sleeve. But is this all there is to her? I smiled slightly. She hasn't changed a bit, has she? People like Gladys might seem unique on the surface, like a lotus rising from the mud. But crack open that shell, and there's nothing inside. Just an inexplicably stubborn pride. That night, I drank until late. And it was Muriel's private chauffeur who finally drove me home. I fumbled to open the front door. Kicking off my high heels haphazardly, I let my coat fall to the floor. I slowly shuffled into the house. Suddenly, the living room light snapped on with a click. The bright light was a bit blinding. I squinted as I looked over. Cedric stood in the living room, his eyes cold as he looked at me. "Have you been drinking?" I ignored him and sat down on the sofa, feeling a headache coming on. I closed my eyes and rubbed my temples. A pair of warm, long hands came over and gently began to massage them for me. Cedric said softly, "You should drink less. Your stomach is already sensitive, and you're prone to migraines." I felt irritated and frowned as I asked, "Did grandfather tell you that again?" The massaging hands stopped. I opened my eyes and looked silently at Cedric. He looked a bit hurt. "Sybil, do you dislike me?" I tilted his chin up, smiling carelessly. "Cedric, why imagine things? This is just an arranged marriage. There's no like or dislike involved." Cedric looked like he was about to cry. He bit his lip, his eyes red and his expression stubborn. "But I like you." I found it both ridiculous and amusing, looking him up and down. Identities may change with time and circumstances, but interests don't. Only shared interests form the strongest bonds in a relationship. "Cedric, I don't need love. As long as our interests align, I can grow old with you." He was silent for a moment, then suddenly asked out of nowhere, "Do you still have feelings for Daniel Carver?" I shook my head in disgust. "No, I only love myself. A strong female lead only loves herself. It's the minor characters who get trapped by emotions." Cedric inexplicably became cheerful again. He said that he and the person I liked were the same, conforming to the principle of aligned interests, and that we would surely grow old together. I was speechless. In truth, I didn't understand where Cedric's affection for me came from. But when I asked him, he remained silent. I wasn't particularly interested in knowing, so I didn't bother to ask again. A few days later, I encountered Daniel again at a business dinner. What rotten luck. I turned to leave immediately. He quickly followed me out. "Sybil." I stopped and greeted him with a forced smile, "Mr. Carver." His expression was somewhat bitter. "Do you have to be so distant with me? We grew up together as childhood friends." "About last time, I'm sorry." I interrupted him. "Stop. Mr. Carver, if you have nothing else to say, I'll be leaving now." With that, I turned to go. Daniel grabbed my hand, his eyes red-rimmed, and said obstinately, "What if everything she said was true? I've finally realized that you're the one I love most. Can you please give me another chance to choose you?" It was utterly disgusting and nauseating. I shook off his hand expressionlessly. "I don't care who you like. Sybil Lancaster never recycles rubbish. Back then, you insisted on breaking off our engagement and marrying Gladys. Although we had different positions, I actually admired that pure foolishness of yours. Now I see that you don't even qualify as purely foolish. You're just a shameless scoundrel." Daniel's face turned pale as he watched me leave, looking lost and dejected. Unexpectedly, this scene was captured by someone with ulterior motives, and became the top trending topic on Twitter. Although my secretary reacted quickly and the trend was soon removed, netizens' enthusiasm for discussion remained unusually high. There were rumors that Daniel's marriage was in trouble, and that the fairy tale of a Cinderella marrying into a wealthy family had finally burst. Others spread gossip that I was a homewrecker, saying it was shameless of me to still be pining for a married ex, when I was already engaged to Cedric and living so well. Naturally, Gladys wouldn't miss such a good opportunity. She immediately posted a few ambiguous tweets, seemingly confirming my interference in their marriage. Muriel couldn't stand it and directly confronted her on Twitter. "You two pieces of rubbish sticking to her are truly unfortunate. One's a scheming homewrecker, the other's a cheating scumbag and a hypocrite. You're a perfect match, scum and trash locked together." Then someone dug up the incident of Daniel drinking until he had a gastric hemorrhage at my engagement party, and Gladys causing a scene at my company. Public opinion gradually split into two camps. One side felt it was karmic retribution, that heaven spares no one, and that Gladys brought this upon herself. This was the outcome of marrying above her station. The other side felt sorry for Gladys, believing she had been played by a rich playboy. The internet was in an uproar once again. When grandfather summoned me back to the family estate to interrogate me, I happened to be with Cedric. He insisted on accompanying me. As we entered grandfather's study, Samuel was already there. How could he miss this opportunity to mock and belittle me? Well, our busy bee has finally graced us with her presence. Making the old man wait for you, quite the diva, aren't you? I replied coolly, I'm so busy because the company has a useless fool like you. Grandfather's been clever all his life, yet somehow he produced such an idiot. Samuel flew into a rage, raising his hand to slap me. You ill-mannered little bye. Cedric stepped in front of me, pushing Samuel's hand away. Mr. Lancaster, next time you consider raising a hand, you'd best weigh your own capabilities first. Sybil isn't just your family's heir, she's also my fiancée. Neither of those positions is one you're entitled to touch. Understood? Having been thoroughly put in his place, Samuel's face alternated between shades of red and white, looking quite unsightly. In the end, he could only sneer. Mr. Paget, how magnanimous of you. Sybil's scandalous news is trending on Twitter, truly living up to her father's reputation. Though I suppose for a man it's considered rakish, while for a woman it's just sordid. I slapped him hard across the face. Awake now? If not, I don't mind giving you another. Samuel's face contorted with rage, but he didn't dare retaliate. He could only fume impotently. Am I wrong? You promiscuous tramp. I slapped him twice more, my expression impassive. Go on, keep insulting me. Let's see if your mouth or my hand is tougher. He was seething, breathing heavily through gritted teeth. He glanced at grandfather sitting at the head of the room. The old man sat perfectly composed, sipping his tea, watching our confrontation without a flicker of emotion. I smiled. Nothing more to say? Those gossip rags are spreading lies, and instead of standing with me against them, you're all too eager to sling mud at me. What's the matter? Afraid I wouldn't figure out you're the one behind all this? Ever since my engagement to Cedric, Samuel had been completely ousted from the succession race. Unwilling to let me have any peace, he'd been antagonizing me at every turn. Samuel panicked, his face pale as he denied it. I don't understand a word you're saying. Don't slander me. I continued calmly, if you don't understand, so be it. But let me teach you a lesson today, a house divided cannot stand. You and I are both Lancasters. We rise and fall together. Don't be too clever for your own good. Grandfather finally spoke up. Sybil is right. Samuel apologized to her. Samuel clenched his fists, gritting out each word through his teeth. I'm sorry. I smiled magnanimously. It's all right. Ignorance is no crime. Uncle, you should read more books. Then you won't make such mistakes in the future. This comment hit Samuel right where it hurt. Before being acknowledged by the Lancaster family at 17, he was just a street thug. He hadn't even finished his GCSEs. Even though the family later sent him for further education, the foundation was already rotten. No amount of polishing could fix that. So he absolutely hated when people called him ignorant or advised him to read more. Samuel could no longer contain himself and stormed out, slamming the door. Cedric held my hand tightly, looking up at grandfather with a cool, dignified expression. Grandfather Lancaster, please don't take those baseless rumors seriously. Sybil and I are very happy together. The old man stood up. Cedric, stay for dinner. Several years ago, I made a tremendous success by investing in the smart manufacturing sector. The financial report of Lancaster Group was astonishing. Revenue soared by 20%, while net profit skyrocketed by 72%. It was a moment of glory. A month later, grandfather called a board meeting. He officially announced that I would take over Lancaster Group, becoming the new leader of the Lancaster family. Except for Samuel's indignation, other shareholders were pleased with this decision. Prior to this, I had already been managing Lancaster Group on behalf of grandfather for over 3 years. My abilities and achievements were evident to all. The Lancaster family has been a prominent name for centuries, and I am the first female CEO in its history. On the day of my appointment, Lancaster Group's stock hit the upper limit as soon as the market opened. At grandfather's behest, the company held a celebratory dinner, inviting various business leaders and some journalists. Daniel and Gladys arrived with the Carver family patriarch and his wife. Mr. Carver, intending to mend relations with our family, stayed by grandfather's side, chatting and laughing as if all previous conflicts between the two families had never existed. Mrs. Carver held my hand, saying, "Sybil, you're truly the outstanding girl I've watched grow up. You're 100 times better than those two good-for-nothings in our family." The Carvers only had Daniel as their sole heir. Her words were clearly meant to criticize someone, and it was obvious who she was referring to. Mrs. Carver continued, not yet satisfied. "It's our Daniel who's blind, rejecting such a precious gem and settling for a mere imitation." Gladys' face indeed changed. Standing behind her, she remained silent, almost grinding her teeth. I smiled politely without responding until Cedric came to escort me away. During the interview session, Gladys somehow obtained a press pass and sharply taunted me. "Miss Lancaster, netizens are saying you're not truly a self-made woman. They claim you've only gotten this far because you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth." The Carver family's faces darkened, looking disappointed. I answered nonchalantly, "Good fortune is also a part of one's capabilities. I've never denied that I was born into a privileged family. But the Lancaster family has existed for centuries, and I'm the only female leader. Do you think this could be achieved merely by being born into the right family?" Gladys, unsatisfied with being rebuffed, began to speak recklessly. "Some netizens also say that 3 years ago, you took away a multi-million-pound project from the Carver family as a condition for breaking off your engagement. 3 years later, you allied with the Paget family through marriage to consolidate your power. They claim you've achieved your current success by stepping on your 2 ex-fiancés. What's your response to that?" I laughed. My response? "I think you're both ridiculous and foolish." Are these really the words of netizens, or are they your own, Mrs. Carver? But I can answer this question for you. If men can climb to the top by stepping on women, why can't women do the same using men? This shocking statement immediately sparked discussions throughout the venue. It's truly strange. Throughout history, countless men have achieved fame and success by relying on their wives, fathers-in-law, parents, or even friends. They can do so openly and often receive praise for it. These men become the minority who control the narrative. They set strict and harsh standards to discipline women, claiming that to be worthy of the title of an independent woman, one must be perfect. They can't rely on others, especially not on men. Otherwise, they'll be judged by public opinion. But why should I listen to men's rules? Why can't I be the one to set the rules of the game? Cedric took the microphone. "My fiancée is exceptionally talented and has always relied on herself. I dare not take any credit." He then added, "But I might as well tell everyone. As long as she needs it, as long as I have it, I'm willing to give her everything." I was stunned for a moment and turned to look at him. He was already looking at me, and then he smiled gently. The interview video spread rapidly across the internet. Trending topics exploded on all platforms. Hashtag Sybil Lancaster admits stepping on men to succeed. Hashtag true or false female protagonist. Hashtag beware of the independent woman trap. Hashtag the old guard is dead, it's time for women to make the rules. Hashtag does no one ship our Cedric and Sybil couple? Netizens' enthusiasm for discussion reached unprecedented levels. Some supported me, while others criticized me. But most of all, people were going crazy shipping us as a couple. Clips of Cedric and I looking at each other were edited into various fan videos, which went viral on YouTube. Meanwhile, the story of Gladys letting her own brother go to prison to avoid troubling the Carver family was also uncovered. After digesting this juicy gossip, netizens were astounded. They said she had played a good hand terribly, achieving nothing after marrying into a wealthy family. She neither used her in-laws' connections to improve herself nor made any money. Instead, she cut ties with her own family and ended up with nothing. What an absolute romantic fool. Even Elaine from Arthurian legend would have to step aside. My mother, whom I hadn't seen in years, suddenly said she wanted to meet Cedric and me. She had been living in a monastery in the countryside. When she saw Cedric, she looked him over for a long time before smiling and saying, "So you're Sybil's fiancé?" Cedric respectfully replied, "Yes, Mrs. Lancaster." She nodded gently, "I saw the video of you protecting Sybil. I'm relieved knowing she has you to look after her." Then she turned to me, suddenly bursting into tears. "Sybil, I'm so sorry for everything." My heart was unmoved. In those first few years, I hated her. My father died in disgrace. And I struggled at every turn in the Lancaster family, facing constant exclusion. Yet she remained indifferent and uninvolved. Sometimes I even wondered if she would shed a single tear if I died. But in recent years, I've stopped hating her. Because I no longer have any expectations of her. Late-coming affection is worth less than grass. The same goes for belated maternal love. I smiled politely, "Madam, there's no need for this. Life is but a journey, and I am merely a traveler." Our connection ended years ago. She understood, her expression darkening. As we drove down the mountain, I stared listlessly out the window, not saying a word. Cedric drove me to the hilltop. Looking at the sea of lights below, he spoke seriously but gently. "It's all right. If you're tired, come rest in my arms. You have the right to rest too." I buried myself in his embrace and had a good cry. All the frustrations of struggling alone were released. The road up the mountain was rough and bumpy, but I've made it this far. The next time I heard the names Daniel and Gladys, it was news of their divorce. Their fairy tale wedding had been like Cinderella's dream come true. But now, the dream was over. Daniel, having experienced a failed marriage, seemed to have finally matured a bit. He tried to take over the Carver family business. But lacking a natural talent for commerce, he made several fatal mistakes in decision-making. The Carver family's fortunes were no longer what they once were. In an attempt to secure business from the Lancaster Group, he humbly requested to meet with me several times, but I refused each invitation. Gladys was expelled from her training school. The divorce had taken a heavy psychological toll on her. She barely attended classes, spending her days in a daze, muttering, "Our love was so pure, untainted by the stench of money and power. Why did it come to this? Why?" She still couldn't understand where it all went wrong. Her fatal flaw was her self-righteous pride and unyielding nature. But it was also these traits that had attracted Daniel in the first place. One could say, pride was both her making and her undoing. Later, Gladys disappeared completely from London. It was my wedding night with Cedric. At the crucial moment, I stopped and demanded to know what he was really after. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a hurt expression. His pupils were dark and bright, his eyelashes thick and long, with a misty haze clinging to them. His eyes were tinged red at the corners, making him look both delectable and pitiful. "Darling, how can you be so cruel? Do you want me to die?" I snorted, "Are you going to tell me or not?" He started to explain, sniffling. He first saw me at my father's funeral. I didn't shed a tear then, which people criticized. Not wanting to listen to their gossip, I hid in the garden. He came over to comfort me, saying, "It's all right. They don't understand that when someone is in extreme grief, they often can't cry at all." I remembered now. It did happen, but at the time I just thought he was being strange. Because I wasn't unable to cry, I simply wasn't sad. Later, when news of my engagement to Daniel reached his ears, he wanted to stop it. But he was only 17 then, still a minor. A year later, when Daniel broke off our engagement for Gladys, Cedric was desperate to come and confess his feelings to me. But his father unexpectedly passed away, and he had to take over the family business in a rush. At that time, the Paget group was in turmoil, and he was afraid of dragging me down. It wasn't until 3 years later, when the Paget group had grown strong under his leadership, that he finally felt able to approach me and propose a marriage alliance. His feelings for me were a case of love at first sight, from a young man to a young woman. The story was finished, both logical and unexpected. Cedric looked at me with wet eyes. "Darling, I love you." My response was a long, tender kiss. The temperature in the room began to rise again. I decided to trust him this once. I want both my career and my man.